welcome you all. Once again, we are going to meet, or we are going to discuss. In this meeting, we are going to discuss about uh, the relation or the establishment between stress and strain. Although we know what is stress, individually we know what is stress, and individually we know what is strain. Individually we know how to represent the stress tensor. Individually we know how to represent the strain tensor. Individually we know how we are representing the mathematically the or differential form of the stress, differential form of the strain. Now the individual relation or cohesive relation of the strains, if strain occurs in or strain induced in one direction due to the application of external load, how to interlink between the strains we know via the Poisson's ratio. Now the next part of our discussion, or next part of our analysis, or next part of our class will go through the interesting part, how to link the stress strain, or how to establish the stress and strain, or which we are not going to establish, actually it has been established by earlier. So how it has been evolved, that about that we will just discuss about this in this class. In this class basically we will talk about the stress strain relations, and moreover the Hooke's law. I think all of us we know what is Hooke's law. Those who are already in they have completed their plus 2, and during that we know the stress is directly proportional to the strain within the elastic limit, and sometime we can also say the stress is directly proportional to strain within the proportional limit as well. Theoretically there is no such difference between, a very minute difference between the proportional limit and elastic limit, although they are not exact. But here what extra we are going to discuss? Yeah, although we know what is strain, although we know what is stress, and although we know stress is directly proportional to the strain, we are talking about the generalized Hooke's law. If I know the Hooke's law, then what do you mean by generalized Hooke's law? That is going to be discussed over here. When I am saying the generalized Hooke's law, basically it starts with the same basic principle what it calls the normal Hooke's law, what we know. The basic difference, if I will start in this way, earlier we have an idea that or when we are saying Hooke's law, we are talking about the Hooke's law without considering the Poisson's ratio. Poisson's ratio, what it says? Now there is interlink in between the strains occur in all the direction, without considering the Poisson's ratio and without considering the straining in all direction. If I will say the stress is directly proportional to the strain, only by a single equation or only by a single relation I can establish the relation between the stress versus strain. Now to extend that, if I am applying the load in one direction, the deformation occurs in all the direction, and if I am not restricting the body to strain in that direction, then I can have this relation which we have discussed during the discussion. That means if I will extend the body in x direction, and if I am not allowing the body to if I will put some stresses or some kind of loading or some kind of attachment not to allow the body to be strained in cross sectional direction, then the lateral strain and longitudinal strain will be same, negative of lateral strain and longitudinal strain will give us the value of the Poisson's ratio. Now if I will restrict that body, it will not allow, then what will happen? To take altogether the effect, if I am putting there or putting there externally, I am not restricting the material or not restricting material, to represent this all kind of situation, one step ahead is called generalized Hooke's law comes into the picture. So generalized Hooke's law basically represents or basically talks about the stress versus strain. All three-dimensional stress if I am applying, or one-dimensional stress I am applying, or two-dimensional stress I am applying, or if the two-dimensional stress develops in the body, or one-dimensional stress develops in the body, or three-dimensional stress develops in the body, their corresponding strain, how to represent that mathematically through a proper assumption as well as the relation. We will talk about the generalized Hooke's law. Now what exactly Hooke's law says, we all of us know. from Hooke's law, stress is directly proportional to strain, and strain can be represented as the ratio between the stress, and this E is nothing but the Young's modulus, or it is called as the proportionality constant. If I write stress sigma is directly proportional to the strain, I can write stress sigma is equal to E into epsilon. I can write here, and this proportionality constant, or proportional to avoid this proportionate or to abolish this proportionate, I multiply a constant with this strain value, so I can get this value of the stress. That's what we know from our earlier knowledge. Now it is, we are extending whatever we just now came to know. That means if I am applying a load in one direction, then it is not possible the body to be deformed in one direction, then the deformation might be in the other direction. Then how to connect all these stresses, then how to connect all these strains. That means if I am applying a load in X, then the strains are, what are the strains are develops? The strains will develop in epsilon X, epsilon Y, as well as epsilon Z. If I will apply the load in Y, also it will generate the strains in all the direction. If I will apply the load in Z, also the strains will generate in all the direction. Then how to represent? That means if I will apply individually, since it obeys the principle of superposition, if I will apply a principle of superposition says, if the F1, F2, F3, F4 loads are there, due to F1 it is delta 1, due to F2 it is delta 2, due to F3 delta 3. Likewise, the total number of forces has to be equal to the total number of deformation. Similarly here, if I will apply F, or if a stress generated sigma x or sigma 1 in principal material direction 1, or in a coordinate of x, or Cartesian coordinate x sigma x, then the strains will develop. Epsilon x, epsilon y, epsilon z will be counted. Similarly, if I will apply load, now I am changing the load from, all these loads are unidirectional we are talking about. If I now I will just apply the load instead of sigma x, if I will apply sigma y, if I will apply sigma z instead of sigma x and sigma y, then what are the strains occurs in corresponding x, y, z direction will be counted. Based on the counting of the stresses, or based on the values of the strains, we will write the relation, what the relation we have written here, just it will be extended. It is unidirectional case without considering the Poisson's ratio. If the load instead of unidirectional, because we know there will be not a situation where, in a real life situation, it is not that the load will be only in one direction, but we are considering the effect might be there in the other place, but or we are taking neglecting effect of the loads or stresses in all the direction. So that's why all these kind of relationships are necessary to establish the material behavior. Now in this context, the next part it says, as I have already talked about what is sigma, what is epsilon, what is E, I no need to explain once again. Then further if I will go, this we know from our earlier discussion, we know from the Poisson's ratio. What is Poisson's ratio? Change negative of lateral strain by longitudinal strain, longitudinal or axial or diametral. Diametral is this one. If it is diametral, then it has to be axial or longitudinal, it may be called as longitudinal too. The above equation is true for the material under uniaxial state of stress, all these equations. If it is not uniaxial state of stress, then what will happen? Then that's why we need, what is the requirement of generalized Hooke's law? Generalized Hooke's law require to analyze the deformation effect produced by all the stresses in each direction, as I said, and although during the calculation or during the evaluation of the strains in all direction, we will put the load individually one by one axis. So the basic requirement of generalized Hooke's law to establish the relation, or it is necessary to analyze the deformation effect produced by all stresses in each direction. The stress effect of the effect of stresses in individual direction can be superimposed to count the total strain where the values is within 1% or less. Why it is 1% or less? Now because we are talking about the strain within the elastic limit only, and the elastic limit, the engineering strain is within 1% or infinite small strain we are talking about, or we know that. Now due to the axial load sigma x, what we have written earlier, epsilon is equal to sigma by E. Due to axial load or axial stress sigma x, we can have similar kind. If sigma x will be applied on this body, then it is going to be extended or going to be pushed. Now In a triaxial case like uniaxial case, this is the originality or originally this kind of situation occurs. This is the original situation where the load or the stresses are developing within the body in all such directions. But it is not true that only one direction I am applying the load. The load will whatever the load will come, that load whatever the load will come, that load basically creates the stresses in all different planes, and these are the 3D state of stress in an element which we have already discussed. Now the stress is acting in x direction, that means dimension in x direction is going to increase. If it is a stretching type of load or the ductile kind of load or a tensile kind of load will be there, then the material, if I am applying a load in x direction, or I am trying to pull the material in x direction, it is going to stretch in x, but the y and z direction, that means the cross sectional area you can see at the rectangular part, is going to decrease. If so, then how to represent the strain? That's what it has been represented over here. That means epsilon x is equal to sigma x by E. That means I have applied the load or the stress, or the stress has been developed in x direction sigma x, and the corresponding strain is epsilon x is equal to sigma x by E. Now what is the lateral strain? The lateral strain is epsilon y and epsilon z, and how much that is value? Poisson's ratio says negative of lateral strain by longitudinal strain. So the lateral strain we are talking about here, two lateral strain are going to develop, one in y direction. Since it's a whole cross section, the whole cross section is going to, as I have also discussed during the discussion of Poisson's ratio, that means the amount of reduction in the thickness, the amount of reduction, if it is stretched, then the cross sectional area is going to shorten. If the cross sectional area is going to shorten, then it has some thickness or height you can say, and some width. This height and width, if it is shortening, that means the area which is going to smaller, if it is going to smaller, it is not only shortening in this direction, that means the width is going to shorten and the thickness is also going to shorten. How much? What is the amount? Now that is the amount of exactly the new times of x, as in the both the cases, and we have taken that it will uniformly, the total area will be shortened based on the or equivalent to the amount of stretching will occur. That and these two are same, or these two can be expressed in the similar manner and the similar fashion, and it has been represented in the similar fashion only. Epsilon y is equal to, that means although the load is applied in x direction and the deformation, majority of the deformation occurs in x direction, and that deformation or distortion is epsilon x is equal to sigma x by E, and the amount of the reduction of the area can be represented epsilon y and epsilon z. I believe this much is clear. Now if I will apply the load in, or it can be represented as in terms of sigma x by E, all these terms can be now represented. Similarly in y direction, what will happen? If instead of the load is developing, or is the load or the stress is in the direction of x, if it is in y, then the corresponding strains can be represented. That means epsilon y is equal to sigma y by E, and other two means epsilon x and epsilon y z will be the new times of epsilon y. If I will write new times of epsilon y, so automatically I can able to write, you see here one epsilon x which has been created due to the stress developed in x direction. Here one epsilon x is developed due to the stress induced in the y direction, and similarly the third direction, if sigma z will be there, also a sigma epsilon x also develops in that direction as well. So you can see, although I am applying the load in unidirectional, the strains are going to occur in all the direction. If the strains are occurring in all the direction, first I will apply the load in x, sigma x, I keep that value. Second, I apply the load in y, I keep the value of epsilon x and corresponding values of epsilon y and epsilon z. Now based on that, the total strain can be represented in direction, in one of the direction or every direction. Thus the strain in one direction can be rewritten as this much. That means this is due to the first part of this is due to the load at along the x. This is due to the load along the y but new times. At that time when the load is in sigma y direction, the epsilon x represents the lateral part of that. When the load in z direction or the stress in z direction, the deformation or the strain occurs at the lateral part. Similarly, all three equations like epsilon x, epsilon z, all three equations or these three equations basically represent the straining in the direction of their corresponding direction if the stresses develops in all three directions. I believe it is clear. Now the strain due to sigma x or sigma y or sigma z, the strain due to sigma y, sigma x and sigma z, and the strain due to sigma x, sigma y, sigma z, all these three. Now it has been superimposed. Now you can get a relation, or you can easily get a relation. It's a one set of relation for strains, or it is called normal strains. Similarly, the shear strains also can be represented. Shear strain as like as it is sigma x by E, the stress is directly proportional to the strain. Based on that we can say, or we can also derive, this is G is called rigidity modulus. In some book it is also written as C. You can see some book also utilize, instead of G it is also utilized C. As per the book, you just understand, one is Young's modulus, one is rigidity modulus, and the name of the Young's modulus in generally or invariably followed by showing E, and the rigidity modulus is followed by G. But sometime you may see G or C, there might be some confusion. Don't confuse it. You just in our study or the analysis will fix to the G only. So the now all six equations, that means two set, one set is normal strain, one set is shear strain, will give you this all six equation. It establishes Hooke's law, establish the relation between stress and strain. Now it establishes the relation between stress and strain in overall loading, or sorry, overall deformation due to the loading of individual directions. Now this six set of equation also named as generalized Hooke's law. And generalized Hooke's law, the further this 1 to 6 is termed as generalized Hooke's law. Also it is called as constitutive relation or equation, because by using the values of the stress and their corresponding strain or deformation with the help of Poisson's ratio, it will establish, or it will help us to rewrite the material behavior under any kind or every kind of loading. So it helps in constitution of the material. So a constitution of the material behavior, so it is also called as constitutive behavior. Or as we have discussed, there are various new materials or modern materials or advanced materials. If the stress is directly proportional to strain within elastic limit, we normally call it a conventional material, or it is you can say, if does not obey, the stress is not directly proportional to the strain within the elastic limit, then that is not a conventional material, it is an unconventional material. And at that time this Hooke's law, which is stress is directly proportional to the strain, will not be adopted. That means only when we can utilize the stress is directly proportional to strain or Hooke's law, when they are having a linear relationship in between. If the relation is not linear, then non-linear, we normally call it non-linear, means not linear in nature. That means the amount of load and the corresponding deformation will not be proportionate. In proportion deformation occurs, then at that time this Hooke's law does not hold for that. And to establish, let's say, some external influences like temperature, atmospheric pressure, if the material deformation or distortion changes, that may change, and at that time you need to any kind of material behavior. If you want to change, then you need to rewrite the constitutive relation or reframe the constitutive relation. So constitutive relation basically establish the relation between, or establish the interlinking between stress and strain, considering other parameters like Poisson's ratio, rigidity modulus and Young's modulus. So the three major terms in the property part: rigidity modulus, Young's modulus and nu or Poisson's ratio. They have a relationship for isotropic and homogeneous material as well, and we will also discuss that part. Not in this lecture. Now the relation between the stress and strain is also called as the relation between the stress and strain. First part is plane stress. the 3D kind, just now we have discussed about the sixth equation, which is talking about the all different direction if I am applying load. Plane stress, I have already defined what is plane. Plane is a three-dimensional surface which has one of the dimension is plane of paper, which has one of the dimension, the thickness of the paper is very less. So the variation in that direction, we don't take any variation in that, it is constant. So if the plane stress condition, that means at that time the strain is the stress is 0 or sigma z is equal to 0, but there will be allowed strain is allowed in that direction. That means if I am stretching, the material is going to, if I am stretching the body, if it is a plane stress condition, if I am applying the body, then applying the load in x direction, then the body is going to contract in other direction. At that time the body is allowed to reduce in all the direction. Now let us say in my case, or I'll plan in such a way that if I'll apply the load in x direction and the body is going to be stretched, I'll put some kind of load over here. I'll not allow the body to be reduced, their dimension in the width cannot reduce. That means I am putting some external effort, not allow the body to deform in that direction. So if I will not apply the body to deform, then the strain will be 0. But here it says, the plane stress condition says, that means the stress might be 0, but the strain is allowed. In generally, or fundamentally, if I will apply a load on x direction or one of the dimension, if the body is going to be stretched in that direction, then other two dimension, that means the cross sectional area, has to be reduced, and that reduction itself allows there is a straining will occur. That means it cannot be 0. So where we can see similar kind of case. Now any example is any material, if the material very thick, if it is very thick, then the variation of the stress is not going to have any implication on that. And the other case, and at that time this all stress values, the corresponding, because if there is a sigma z is equal to 0, their corresponding shear stresses are also equal to 0. So all stress terms will be 0, but the strain term cannot be 0. Now if I will put epsilon z is equal to, not if I will go to the last relation, epsilon z is equal to sigma z by E, all this condition if I will go, if I will put sigma z is equal to 0, that doesn't mean the epsilon z is equal to 0, because epsilon z says epsilon z is equal to sigma z by E minus nu of sigma x plus sigma y, minus nu by E sigma x plus sigma y. That means the first part, the sigma z, since sigma z is equal to 0, so sigma z by E is equal to 0, but due to the straining occurs in sigma x and sigma z cannot be 0. So that means there is some value of straining will be there due to the application of the loads in other direction. It says in that way. Similarly, the plane strain condition also can be represented. The plane strain condition also can be represented, and the constitutive relation will be expressed at that time. If it is one of the plane stress condition, then the constitutive relation can be reduced. That means sigma z is equal to 0, what I have just now discussed. Now the corresponding strain epsilon x will be have sigma z is equal to 0. So this term will only exist, sigma epsilon x, epsilon y, and epsilon z. Now it has been represented in strain and stress relation. If I will write in stress and strain relation, you please go through this inverse relation, how to find out this inverse relation. If you are unable to find it out, then I'll again discuss, or I'll provide some material to be to understand. I think most of you can do, so I need not to discuss much on that inverse relations of stresses. Now what are the major outcome of this discussion? The Hooke's law is probably the most, not probably, originally it's the most well known, widely used constitutive equation for an engineering material. Again, it's a normal material, or sorry, you can say conventional kind of material, and it is not true for, if it is a non-porous material, the Hooke's law, if it is a non-porous solid material, then Hooke's law holds. If it is a porous material, it may not hold for that. So similarly, however, it can be said all that, but just now I said, it can be said that all engineering materials are linear elastic isotropic, or because it cannot be said that all engineering material, if it is not linear elastic, then this Hooke's law may not able to hold for that. So for that, new material, or if the corresponding, if we will develop the new material or any new material come into the picture for the structural application or any kind of application, then we must have to have the constitutive behavior. If I'll apply the load, how the deformation will occur, and how to establish various time to time, or every now and then people are working on material and their corresponding constitutive relation, that has been discussed based on the kind of material, like elastic, hyperelastic, plastic. Likewise, there are different constitutive relation can be framed, or people are framing, or they are utilizing. But for the our discussion purpose, we will only restrict to our knowledge: isotropic, homogeneous material, conventional kind of material, and Hooke's law is obeying for that. I think by this I am just closing my session, and before closing also, just two three more points I just want to share with you. One is whenever a design engineer designs anything, it talks about allowable load and working load, working stresses or allowable stresses. What for those points are need come into the picture? These are the main allowable load or working load. Basically, if I'll apply a load, what is the meaning of allowable load or working load or the maximum load? If I'm talking about allowable load, what is the maximum load it can take? You see, if I'll give an example, I am having a bicycle, and this bicycle is normally utilized by a single person. If someday, instead of one person, if two people or three people at a time using, or at a time three people are sitting and one person is riding the cycle, instead of one, if it is three for longer period of time, it is not going to fail immediately. That means the allowable load, whatever we are talking about, the allowable load is always, it may reach to the ultimate load. Most of the time, or 99% of the cases, the structure or structural components are within the allowable loading conditions. If it is within the allowable loading conditions, then the structures are not going to fail easily. And based on that, the factor of safety, how much it is safe or unsafe, it will be decided. So what is this allowable stress says, or allowable load says? The maximum load that a structural member or a machine component will be allowed to carry under normal condition of utilization is considerably smaller than the ultimate load. If it is if it is less than the ultimate load, then what is the based on this ratio? So there is a main key point. If it is considerably smaller than the ultimate load, then what it is called, the smaller load is referred as the allowed load, allowable load, and sometimes as the working load or design load. It is named as, all different names as given the lower part of the lower load, which is normally every time the structure experiences. Now, thus only the fraction of the ultimate load capacity of the member is utilized when the allowable load is applied. Let us say the chair I am sitting now, I am having 85 kg, I am sitting on that chair, but also a person having 130 kg also can be utilized, and the chair, let us say it is designed for 150 kg, the ultimate load, the plastic is going to break. If it is 150, immediately a person will sit 150 kg, it may not possible that the structure will break or it will fail. It may take some time. It doesn't mean also the ultimate load always the ultimate, due to the ultimate load immediately it fails, but in the real life situation. But it says in that way, rather will say, I also discussed earlier, most of the structure or structural component or beams, any kind of building, everything, although they are been designed for ultimate loads, they are working below within the elastic limit. The structure or structural component does not fail due to the ultimate load, but it fails due to the repetitive kind of, or what is that called, fatigue kind of loading. So most of the time. So if it is so, then the allowable stress or allowable or working load is sufficiently low than the ultimate loading, and that how to define. Thus the load which is carried by any structural component is very small as compared to the ultimate load, and a higher amount of load is reserved to assure its safe performance. The ratio between the load, these two, that allowable load and the ultimate load, is give you a new term, is called FOSS or factor of safety. And sometime the factor of safety also, margin of safety also, some engineering also utilize, instead of factor of safety they are also utilize the margin of safety. What should be the margin of safety? In some field of engineering, instead of factor of safety, margin of safety is being used, and the margin of safety is just factor of safety minus 1. That means always the factor of safety, it says in this way, that always the factor of safety is more than 1. If it is less than 1, because it is ratio between the ultimate load to allowable load, the maximum load which can take and the how much load it is given. If it is the lower part, so always it will be more than 1. If it is more than 1, or if it, what should be the maximum, what is the optimal value? It should be 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, likewise. If I am going on increasing, the ideal value is 1, or the ideal value is more than 1. If the ideal value is more than 1, as we have discussed, it should be little bit higher, which has already been said in the first part. Thus, the load which is carried by the structural component is very small as compared to the ultimate load, and a higher amount of load is reserved to assure its safe performance for longevity of the life. Now, the margin of safety, as it is said, first minus 1 or factor of safety minus 1, that means it directs that factor of safety is normally is more than 1. What should be its value, and how we are representing? Now, those values are basically, if the factor of safety is very high, let us say if it is 5, 10, 20, likewise, then the amount of ultimate load is going to very high. That means it can go up to, let us say 300 ton it can work, and we are using for 30 Newton or 30 kilonewton, then it will have no use. So what is the use of 300 ton? Then I can go for 3 ton only, and the cost of the whole thing, it is uneconomical. So I'll talk about that. And now the mathematical relation of the factor of safety, basically represented as ultimate load by allowable load, what I have just now discussed, or ultimate stress by allowable stress. So somebody may ask, so if it is ultimate load or ultimate stress, both are used. Because why so? What is the significance of load and stress? We know load is application of externally applied, and stress is internal part of the body. Then which one will be more utilized or more acceptable? So it can be said in this way. The equation 1 and 2 both are identical, as I said. The load equation is not linear during the ultimate load state, because we need the ultimate value, and when the elastic limit is goes, then the ultimate states come, ultimate state is coming in the material. Then the load history, load versus deformation, if you will see any experimental work, if or experimental testing, we can see at the ultimate state the load versus, because this is only whatever we are discussing now, we are discussing based on the within the elastic limit. If goes beyond the ultimate state comes after the elastic limit. If it is after the elastic limit, then it will have no such point to talk about the because it is not true, and it is not linear in nature. The stress is directly proportional to strain within elastic limit also, that is also true. Then what is the use of this 1 and 2? Both are identical, but the load equation we are talking about, we are not talking about 2, because we will come to that. Since the first part of this equation, which is showing the ultimate load to allowable load, the load versus deformation graph near about the ultimate or before the ultimate also, it starts behaving non-linearly. The slope is not constant further. If the slope is not constant, they are not linear. If they are not linear, we cannot believe on those values, and if you are unable to believe those values, there may be chance of error. It gives some erroneous output. Now so the load relations is, so basically the first, ultimate load by allowable load, normally we don't use. The second part, it is also true that the stress and relation does not provide a true assessment, because when we are saying it is stress strain graph, but most of the design, or it is also true that the stress relation does not provide a true assessment of safety design, but it is widely used. Because what is the reason? Any idea what is the reason? Because although it is not giving the true assessment, but it can give you the internal part of the body. It develops within the internal. Why it is not true assessment? Because it is internally develops. We cannot measure directly the assessment from there. If it is not, but it is giving whatever the empirical relation has been developed, or the experiences says that up to the elastic limit, or in a ductile material, mostly the designs we are talking about in ductile materials, before the ultimate state a yield point starts, which is the just indication of the material start giving some kind of, instead of ultimate load, also sometimes yield stress are also been used. And for the ductile material, yield means failure starts or plastic deformation induced. That means it will not comes to its original position. If I will unload the body after the elastic limit or yield zone, then some amount of, and where from this yield zone and all these conditions, we will talk about the stress strain diagram in the next 1 or 2 classes. We will cover that. You will have better idea on that. So basically it gives, ductile material gives the indication of failure first before the final failure. So which helps us to decide from the stress rather than the load deformation graph in the case of, and the ultimate load which we are taking in case of ultimate stress by allowable stress, instead of ultimate stress we can take the yield stress as well, which helps us to understand that part. So based on that, some selection of factor of safety on which they are depends. Now why it needs to be studied before considering the factor of safety? Because if I am designing some material, I must know where it is going to be, what are the kind of environment, what are the kind of situation it will be work on, which kind of situations. So all these basic ideas we must know before the finalizing of the design, or before the finalizing the product, or before the finalizing of the production. So that's why the factor of safety or the selection of factor of safety is very important. If I am changing from geographically, I am going from one place to another place, various other points, like if something which is designed for our normal atmosphere, it may not be utilized, the same condition or same material may not be useful for the aquatic offshore structures, because of their environmental change or environmental effects are there. So slowly the material characteristic changes. If the material characteristic changes, the stress and behavior changes, so everything in the connection to the down the line is going to change. So that's why it is necessary to understand what are the factor of safety, what is the importance of factor of safety before the design of anything. And as I said, if a factor of safety is too low or too high, based on, we have to have a optimal value of the factor of safety to make the design economical in nature. If the factor of safety is too high, then it is uneconomical, the cost will be very high. If it is too low, then the safety is 0 or safety will reduce. If the safety is reduced, then the things are not going to work out properly. Hence the factor of safety for a given design has to be chosen based on many factors. What are the factors? Various that may occur in the properties of the member of under consideration, the composition, strength, the dimension, if there is a void or not, all these kind of simple from miniature size to the macroscopic level. If something varies, the whole structural concept also need to be taken care. The number of loading, the kind of number of loading means, when I am saying there is a body force, surface force, environmental force. If it is a body force, then what are the body forces are there? Only gravitational force, electrical force, magnetic force, all this is there. It is there is a chance of sudden failure. Why the fatigue kind of the fatigue or sudden failure while it is occurs. Let's say if I am going on a road and I do not know on the road, after some part, if after 100 meter 200 meter there is a deep, you can say something hurdles on the road is there. I do not know, I am going very speed, my car is on a very speed, or my bike is a very speed, and I just immediately stop. When I stop, when I saw the thing, either as per the driver, he can give the brake, or it just run on the same thing. that means either it is a you can say it's a group is there, or it's a bigger group, then you may face the safety, or the vehicle, or the I am talking about the structure or structural member may get some kind of shock, immediate sudden shock. It may break, or it may sometime it may break, sometime it may bend, or some kind of hazardous situation may create. So those are the conditions. If some my miniature things has to be incurred during the kind of design, if any structure gets some kind of shock, then how to adjust that. So the for the shock loading also some part of the design load has been considered. So how much it is the percentage? It may be 5%, it may be 10%, it may be 15%, it may be 20%. Again, where you are working or on which road you are. If it is a hilly area, it may be possible every time. If it is a normal area, it may not be possible, or it is not necessary to take such kind of. But when design will be done, it is not always done by the you see, if I'll differentiate in this way, the vehicles which are used for the civil works or the defense work, if you'll see the same company is designs for two different kind of structure, which is facing a hazardous situation and which is facing a normal kind of situation. And whatever I am talking about the hazardous situation, whatever I am talking about the normal situation, that is okay. If something, some bump or something, some groove will come in between, it is okay. But in hill area, like hill area, when I am saying our LOC zones, all these vehicles where it has been used, if I am talking about the vehicles or helicopters or anything which is used, very certain very climatic change is there, immediate climate may change, all this sudden kind of loading, one kind of loading or many kind of loading, or one kind of situation or many kind of situation. According to that, if I'll talk about, then the design or the allowable or the selection of factor of safeties are very much important at that point. So we got to know what are the things. And as already I have discussed, I need not to discuss again the type of loading planned of the design that may occur in future, the type of failure that may occur. And as I said, brittle materials fail suddenly and it collapse immediately, it doesn't give any kind of indication, whereas the ductile materials first go through yielding, it gives some indication. So based on that, uncertainty due to method of analysis, determination that occur future because of poor maintenance, because of unpreventable natural causes, all these conditions are basically utilize or affect the factor of safety or allowable stress. So what we understand from here, we understand how to represent the Hooke's law. This class basically talks about what is Hooke's law and what is generalized Hooke's law, and why the generalized Hooke's law, what is constitutive relation, and how the constitutive relation is necessary for any mechanical design. Then what is the factor of safety or allowable stresses, and why? Because slowly we are getting to the problems when we are going to solve a beam problem and beam kind of thing. Then when we'll go for the design of the same, then those points, these are the consideration has to be taken care slowly. So now for the time being, I am closing here by discussing, and further we'll discuss about the relation between. Now we got E, G, nu. E, Young's modulus we got, and G we got from this Hooke's law direction. That during the discussion of Hooke's law, generalized Hooke's law, we found three major things. One is Young's modulus, when the stress versus strain due to the axial loading, and or the normal stress, the stress versus strain relation, this rigidity modulus, and nu. These three things, what is the relation between these three major, because we are discussing about the isotropic and homogeneous material in all this. So we'll discuss about that in our next class.